So I want to welcome Honorable Chairman Robb Pitts, and I know the Chair of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, County Manager Dick Anderson, is here as well, and Public Works Director David Clark. So thank y'all for coming tonight. I had been doing this because I've wanted to get to know and council and citizens to get to see some of our partners. And I know y'all are very busy and have a lot of meetings in Atlanta. And since we're at the very southern end, it's hard sometimes to get that way. So it's nice of y'all to come down. And I just wanted to say a few things about Chairman Pitts. You were elected to chair in 2017. And prior to that role, he served on the Board of Commissioners for 12 years and the Atlanta City Council for 20 years. And y'all are collaborating across 15 Fulton County cities. So thank you. And we know we're your priority. I know you recently delivered State of the County as of 2025, along with your priorities and initiatives for 2026. And that's why I invited them down to hear a little bit about that. And what's amazing to me, and some folks may not know, but y'all just passed a $1+ billion budget. Billion. Ours is 5 million or something like this.
Wow.
So 12 with reserves, with everything. Everything. And y'all have been working diligently with the World Cup soccer coming to the area. So I know it's a huge priority. And you've advocated for senior services, and I know we have a lot of folks that appreciate that. So our partnership with the county is super important, and we are glad you were here. So turn it over to you, Chairman Pitts.
We're on. All right, Madam Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Robb Pitts. I chair the Board of Commissioners of Fulton County. We are the largest county in the state of Georgia, and of the 3,000 plus counties in the United States of America, your Fulton County is ranked by some as number 4 out of 3,000 plus. When you live here, you may not appreciate that, but that's a big deal for us. There are some counties that have more people than we do, some that have more land area than we do, but all things considered, we are in the top 5 of all the counties in the United States of America, and that is a big, big deal for us and hopefully for you as well. Let me be fairly brief in my remarks and respectful of your time. It all begins with the budget each year. And I've been a stickler for budget since my days on the city council because it's not my money, it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And I want to make sure that we're spending your money wisely. And I think that we've done a great job with that. Proof of that is the fact that for the first time in the history of Fulton County, we have a AAA bond rating. And that is another big deal for us. And why that's so important is when we go to borrow money, we get that money at the lowest possible rate because of that AAA bond rating. One project that I think is going to be very impactful and important to this part of the county, when Wellstar made the decision to close 2 hospitals, Atlanta Medical Center and the hospital that they had in East Point, that was devastating for us. But even before that, we felt, and I'm sure you felt as well, that there was a healthcare desert in South Fulton County. I went to work when that happened to make sure that some point in the near future we could correct that problem. And the good news is, for the first time in partnership with Grady Hospital, there will be a freestanding medical emergency clinic right here in South Fulton County. And the reason that's important, because for some, it was quicker to drive from South Fulton to Macon for emergency services than to downtown Atlanta. So with that being here, that's a big deal. Second phase of that complex will be a freestanding medical office building where all specialties will be there, gynecology, urology, cardiology, you name it. And the big one there will be a brand new hospital in South Fulton County for the first time. And that will happen over the next several years, but just stay tuned. And I think that we're making considerable progress. And Madam Mayor, you mentioned we love our seniors in Fulton County. We have the finest multi-purpose centers in the country. And I know this because my counterparts across the country call me to ask and inquire about how we do what we do here for our seniors. And I'm always glad to talk about it. But we're building two new ones. One will open in Alpharetta later on this year, 4700 North Point Parkway, and a comparable facility here in South Fulton County on land that the county already owns. So those are two projects that I am particularly proud of. And with that said, I'd like to bring up our county manager, Dick Anderson, to talk about some other items that we're doing before hearing from our public works director, David Clark. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens. We appreciate being here. Just to add to what the chairman said, public health, public safety, and then infrastructure was more or less summed up our strategic imperatives over the next 10 years. And he's already touched on all the great things that we're doing in public health. And I do want to say, just from today's meeting with Grady Health, they've been a tremendous partner. They will be a terrific provider for South Fulton, and we certainly couldn't do what we're getting ready to do without them. But stay tuned for everything that will develop there next to where the elections hub is. Of course, there's been some excitement around that facility lately, but that's going to be, again, just a tremendous healthcare set of options that otherwise didn't exist for South Fulton. When I visited maybe a couple of weeks ago with GDOT looking at the access points for that center, there will be as many as 24,000 folks that will be served just from that emergency room. So think about that on an annual basis. That, as the chairman said, would have been going either to downtown Atlanta or further south. And one thing that he did mention was, as we went to work on that whole set of healthcare access options, one of the most compelling things that came out was the mortality rate, or the average length of life, was actually 5 years less in South Fulton as compared to kind of the middle of Fulton and North Fulton, all largely due to healthcare access. So it's it's a real impact on the lives of people. The second part of this, and now I asked David Clark to come up and really talk a little bit more detail about things that we're doing in infrastructure, is public safety. Of course, our role in public safety is not what yours is in terms of police and fire. It's in the running of the courts and then the running of the Fulton County Jail, which has definitely been a challenge of recent and for years, quite frankly. We are under a DOJ consent order. We have been under that order for approximately 12 to 13 months now. The good news is two or threefold. Number one, the Board of Commissioners have dedicated funding that is directly aimed at the compliance requirements of that DOJ order. So we spent approximately $15 million last year. We have $50 million in this year's budget. There's plenty there to both not only enhance the facility in the near term, but also provide staffing, which really are the two fundamental issues that have to be addressed. As you looked at all of these requirements that are in the DOJ consent order, there's about 275, and within 1 year's period of time, we're almost 70% compliant. So there's still a lot of heavy lifting to do. There's a lot of issues, particularly, again, on staffing because of the marketplace in general, detention officers in specific. The chairman and I traveled to Dodge County last Friday to look at a facility that's been built in about a year's period of time for the state Department of Corrections, and they have the exact same issues. They're, depending on the facility, 40 to 70% vacant. So that single issue is something that we're laser focused on. What the Board of Commissioners have now approved, and we will be bringing forward in terms of detailed plans, is the construction of a new special purpose building. It will house up to 1,800 folks who have special needs. So these could be behavioral health needs, physical issues, folks that just should not be in the general population. And surprisingly, out of a population of about 3,000 that are currently in the jail, 70% or so have some sort of issue of that nature. So that's where the first dollars are going, and that will be about $550 million of a $1.1 billion program. It will take 5 years to complete. And then the next 5 years will be to renovate the towers that exist today that are known as Rice Street. Now, those will be now fundamentally just almost housing units only. So all of the common areas from cafeteria to intake and the like will be in this new facility, along with the special purpose need services that will be there and all programming. But in total, that'll be approximately a 10-year program. So 550 or so for the first building and about 550 for the renovation. The positive in that is, again, we're making progress in the building as it exists today, as I mentioned, and we are clearing a lot of the issues that are in the DOJ consent order, but it is not a quick fix. It is a long-term commitment, and we appreciate the Board of Commissioners making that commitment. And one of the things that we have long-term financial planning engineered, I'll say it that way, is looking at every opportunity to not have that impact the property tax payer. And the principal ways are two that can be accomplished. One is TADs as they naturally expire, principally in Atlanta, that we would exit. And another opportunity that we have is our pension costs are declining just based on the attrition of a pension plan that was closed in 1999. Those two things alone would be over $2 billion in value. So that more than pays for the investments that I'm talking about in terms of the jail. It also covers the cost that the chairman was talking about in terms of the healthcare access. So it can be done and be taxpayer neutral. So that's a pretty significant issue. The last thing, and David, if you'll just come on up, I want to introduce David Clark on issues that I think are very important to Chat Hills and all of our cities. One was we did not have a dedicated funding source for transportation. Our funding source for transportation, the penny sales tax, had always gone to MARTA. That was the way it was set up decades ago. The good news in that is we're one of the few counties, and that's one of the reasons that we're ranked 4th nationwide for economic prosperity and development, is that we have a rail system. The bad news was we did not have dedicated funding for roads and bridges beyond what, of course, GDOT provided. That has been in place now, and David oversees it for the county and helps each city for almost 10 years, thereabouts now, and it generates $500 million each 5-year period. So that's $1 billion or so that would not have been invested in transportation improvements absent having that T-SPLOST program put in place. And we're just getting ready to come up on that now in 2026 for renewal. So I want David just talk briefly to that. And then the second thing that David's directly responsible for is our public works infrastructure. So this is wastewater treatment across the county. And one of the things that I think we did and linked up very tightly is from each city, we developed growth forecast a number of years ago and started with where it was growth driven in North Fulton and made a series of investments there. In fact, we've just finished, if you will, for the most part, the investments that were required there, over 500 million or so in North Fulton capacity, won a number of awards. David's got a complete list of those at Big Creek Water Treatment, where we've expanded that capacity significantly. Now the same thing needs to be done in South Fulton, because the growth forecasts that were developed, and David can speak to this, are not only being met, but in many cases exceeded. So that process, just like we did in North Fulton, needs to be done in South Fulton. And it's really following the growth. Some would say it's driving growth, but I think David would say we're more meeting the demand that already exists and the forecasts that are there. So David, if you'll talk a few minutes about that, I'm sure people.
Good evening. Again, David Clark, Director of Public Works for Fulton County. First on the T-SPLOST, I think the T-SPLOST is one of the best things that Fulton County has ever done collectively with the cities. And the main reason why I think it has worked so well is that each individual city is given the flexibility to design the program of how they're going to use their revenue any way they want. What works down here in Chattahoochee Hills obviously is very different than what Sandy Springs wants to do. And because each city has complete flexibility, the county does not manage any of the projects. All the projects are managed at the city level. All the county does is make sure that the money is being spent in line with the General Assembly's law, as well as making sure that the Department of Revenue sends the right money to the right cities, because each city obviously gets a different percentages based on their population. But that has really allowed, I think, the T-SPLOST program to fully kind of come into its own over the last 10 years. It does expire in March of 27, so we're about a year out from that. So if we want to renew it, and I certainly hope that we do want to renew it, it has to be on the November ballot of this year. And so there, you'll be hearing over the next couple of months some meetings that we'll need to have to make sure that we agree on a way of how to distribute the money among the 15 cities. Traditionally, and I think we'll probably recommend the same, it's done on a population basis. We've been working very closely with Georgia State University to provide us with recommendations of what they think the sales tax revenue will be over the next 5 years. So we'll have that piece plus the population piece, and then be able to divide that to each city, and then each city will have the flexibility to design their own program. So be looking for that over the next couple of weeks. On the wastewater side, really there's a couple of big projects that we've been doing in Chattahoochee Hills, and we are doing in Chattahoochee Hills to really prepare for the expansion of our Camp Creek facility. Most people who are on sewer in the South Fulton County area, their flow actually goes up to our Camp Creek facility, which is just off of Fulton Industrial Boulevard near Campbellton Road, which is a long way from here, and a lot of it is uphill. So there's a lot of pump stations that the flow has to go through in order to get up there. And we're right now have done 4 pump stations here in Chattahoochee Hills. 2 of them are complete, 2 of them are under design right now. The 2 that are complete that we finished about 2 years ago is the one on Atlanta Noonan Road opposite the Serenbe developments, as well as Little Bear. Little Bear used to be a small package plant that served that community, about 150 homes. Not very well. We have done some environmental studies since we took that package plant offline and replaced it with a pump station to get the flow to our large Camp Creek facility. We're actually seeing environmental improvements to Little Bear Creek in the year that we've taken off that package plant. So that certainly is good news from there. The other 2 projects that are under design right now that are ready for construction are the Friendship Road Pump Station, which is going to serve the area along the South Fulton Parkway once you enter into Chattahoochee Hills. And then the second one is near the Campbellton Crossroads area, which is shared between Chattahoochee Hills as well as the city of South Fulton. A lot of it is where the Buchart Farms property will drain into from a wastewater standpoint. But those 2 projects are fully funded and ready to go. Friendship is the next one that will be out for construction, hopefully in the next couple of months. And then the Buchart Campbellton Crossroads project is right behind that for midsummer to late fall. Can't help you with your City of Atlanta water issues. I certainly emphasize or sympathize with that. I hear that all the time. Unfortunately, Fulton County does not provide drinking water to any of the South Fulton areas. But if there's anything that we can do, I'll be more than happy to help. Thank you.